All right, and welcome to another episode of the Political Playbook. I'm Wyatt. This is my co-host Darren, and today we're doing a little thing interesting. Today we're going to be rating Trump's first 100 days in office, sort of like a report card. I know there's the traditional economic report card that happens every quarter. This one's going to be a little bit more open, a little bit more broad about the entire presidency. So, I guess like to start, just like overall, Darren, like what would you give them like overall? And then we'll dive into the specifics of each issue.
Ooh, overall, I think especially if each point is weighted equally or so, honestly, I'd have to give them like a low D, I would say, for me right now. But I would say it's in D range, not F range quite yet. So,
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, I would save F. I mean, you got to save that for like that's got to be like a COVID type situation where like everything's like in free fall collapse. So like, I know we're doing a little bit of thumbnail clickbait with all the Fs, but I don't actually think honestly a single issue he's on is really an F other than like maybe well, I guess we'll get into it later. But I mean, overall, I'd give him probably like a D to D minus. I think that's pretty on the nose.
oh, okay. Well, you're actually a little more charitable than me. I mean, and we'll get into it, but I think there are definitely points where I'll be giving them Fs on certain ones, but I'll actually be ranking them pretty high on maybe one thing. So, well, yeah, we can go down the list if you want.
Sure, sure, kick it off.
Economy. How about you? Do you want it? Do you want to go on economy or me?
Yeah,
I'll
you
go.
go ahead.
I'll
Yeah,
go.
yeah.
Keep the flow going. Economy. I think honestly, I have to give an F right now. I mean, as as open as I am to like tariffs and all that, I feel like that's worth restating. The way it was rolled out was just so nonsensical and honestly stupid that I just have to give it an F. I mean, it's just created a ton of uncertainty. It's alienated a lot of like allies, even. Uh, yeah, I mean, and like they're doing this like retroactive like justification uh, uh of the policy, even though it like was changing by the minute there for a second. So like first it was like we're going to reshore X amount of manufacturing because everybody's getting a tariff, so it's going to make more sense just to manufacture in America. But at by in 2 weeks' time, that evolved to well, we're going to isolate China and we're going to continue the friend shoring policy. Going forward, we're going to strengthen that, maybe make some trade deals. It's really just you know a, a negotiation tactic. That's what it transformed into. And I don't know. There's just no consistency. I think worse times are to come. I was listening to stuff today. It's like things take after the order is placed, and it's specifically regarding Chinese goods. After the order is placed, it takes X amount of time for those goods to actually reach America, and so uh, we might start really feeling the effects of all this pretty soon. I mean, it's been about a month-ish, so that's about the amount of time you would expect the Chinese goods to be arriving or not arriving because so many companies don't even want to pay the tariff. So,
Right.
but
Huh.
what would you rate them?
Yeah.
You
So,
said you would give
so
D minuses overall.
yeah, yeah. On the economy specifically, I'd give him probably a D minus. The Dow is down anywhere from like 6 to 7%. S&P is down about 6%. These tariffs, like you said, they're just such an incompetent mechanism, right? And the chaos has not even really started. So I saw somewhere that imports from China, like really, no, 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 I apologize. It was all imports on the West Coast are actually down 40%. So what that
Yeah.
means is for Q2 and Q3, like where I mean that's why Trump is, saying that like, for Christmas, maybe these girls are gonna have instead of $30, maybe two, you know?
Yeah.
What but also everything's fine, like it's kind of weird how you can have it both ways, right?
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
mean, the whole thing is just completely incompetent. I mean, you have Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, basically running cover, trying to tell our allies that, like, look, this is just a negotiation tool. Like, relax. This is not sustain. I mean, he's probably said this is not sustainable at least 50 times. And then you have, Trump, who's like, these tariffs may be here forever. I mean, I don't know, you know? So, kind of pick a lane here is all I'm saying. Um,
Oh yeah. And a point on that 30 doll thing versus two dolls. I'm more, I will say, I mean, on that point in particular, I am open to those kinds of arguments, and I'm totally okay with the leader of a country saying that, I think it actually takes a lot of balls to come out and say something like that, like, yes, you people will suffer, but for the greater good.
well,
The only
so,
problem is it's
right,
not actually
right.
going to net any results because the rollout was so stupid and
Yeah,
nobody's going to make any long-term investment decisions based on this thing that changes by the week.
that's kind of my thing is like all this suffering, all this, and I don't mean like hardcore suffering, but all this like economic downturn for what? Like for what exactly? You know?
Oh
I
yeah.
still don't quite understand an angle here, to be honest with you. So, Uh, I mean, there's no telling. The good news is that he's got enough runway till the midterms where this may actually end up working. I mean, here's the thing. If he decided he's going to get rid of all these tariffs tomorrow, people would cheer and clap and say that he's the smartest president ever and, the art of the deal and whatnot.
Yeah. Yeah, especially the people around him and then his base of support, which, I think might even be higher than I previously thought. It really hasn't diminished all that much, even with all this volatility. And we'll probably get into that later. Well, do you want to? I mean, I know it's kind of out of order, but do you want to hit on the approval rating real quick?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, go ahead, man.
All right. So, like, his approval rating coming into the presidency wasn't really all that high. I think it was like 47 percent ish. Uh, and right now it's like 43. So it's, among voters, that is. Uh, so, it's diminished a little. Honestly, I thought with how bad I think it's been going that it would diminish more. So honestly, he seems to have like roughly 40%, maybe 35% of voters just locked in. Uh, I think, maybe there's still roughly 8% that could still possibly leave him, but he seems to be doing, for him, it's actually pretty okay. Apparently, according to the New York Times, this is the worst 100 days in terms of approval rating for any modern president. So I would assume that's up to like Jimmy Carter or something.
Right. And the guy he beat was himself in 2017. So,
Isn't that amazing? And
it's
it's
hilarious.
really remarkable because the media is less, I mean, they're certainly not pro Trump, with the exception of, the obvious outlet, Fox, OAN, but, the more,
Legitimate
like,
news,
yeah, the
right?
more legitimate news that isn't just entertainment, they're less hard on him now than they were. I mean, they're still not in favor of them, but it's nowhere near what it was in 2016. But even with the softening of the coverage, I mean, he's just doing horrible on the approval ratings. So,
Yeah,
what do you have any thoughts on it?
yeah, and I'll just touch on that a little bit. I mean, like, one, I'm not even sure that approval ratings really matter for him because, like, at the end of the day, he's a lame duck president, at least until he changes the Constitution or refuses to leave, right? So, I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
the only impact approval ratings for him actually have is going to be like, is it going to piss people off enough to like vote in the midterms against the Republicans? Which that's certainly the angle they're going with. But I'm not sure. I mean, you'd have thought the approval rating was like the Dow or the S&P. Like, it's really not that important of a metric to me. Like, other than like its ability to like lower your political capital. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I guess when a second term isn't on the table, it probably really doesn't even matter all that much. I do think though that it might matter to him. He's egotistical enough. I think he probably does care somewhat. But yeah, to what effect it'll really have on him, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. But I mean, overall, I mean, like you said, it's the worst in the first 100 days in modern history. So, they were saying you got to go back like 100 years to like, whatever to find something that was nearly as bad as this. But
Oh wow. Oh
I
my
would,
God.
I mean, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me because, like, I would say that there was some rare, like, optimism and hope, whenever he first got in, at least like relative to what it was last time. And then he
Yeah, there was
managed
quite
to,
a bit. He's really squandered it.
yeah, that's what I was gonna say. He's really pissed all that away with his actions. Um, but I mean, that's pretty much it for me on that one. Unless you have something more you'd have to say or have a question or something.
Yeah, there's nothing really more to opine on with the approval rating because it's just kind of like a stat. I do think it is uh impressive in a sad way though that he's already messing it up that bad. But we can hit on immigration now if you like. I
Sure,
for immigration, I think I would rank him honestly. I'd say a B, just a flat B.
that's what
Maybe.
I have.
Oh, okay, okay. Great minds think alike then. Yeah, my reasoning for it, I'm sure it's probably similar to yours, but I'll go ahead and list it out. Deportations from the interior are not exceptionally high. In fact, they're kind of low. But crossings into the country from the southern border are at an all-time low. So, even if deportations aren't really high, I mean, people coming in is so low that it kind of makes up for that fact. And you know, it could be the case that ICE gets some more funding here coming up in this upcoming budget battle. We won't hit on it just yet, but uh, yeah, and if that's the case, then we could see significant escalation regarding deportation. So I'm cautiously optimistic. I'm giving him a B right now, partly because of optimism about the future, partly because just keeping people from coming in, he's doing a good enough job on that. I think it warrants a pretty high grade, but not quite good enough to for me to give him an A yet. What's your reasoning for giving him a B?
Sort of a bunch of the same. Crossings are down, like you said, lowest ever. It kind of just proved to me that it was really an act of will to get the border situation under control. Um, But I mean, I was really like struggling here to go like C to B, like C, C plus, B minus B, because like I am really bothered by a lot of the like executive overreach. So like you touched on, in this budget bill, what if we get extra ICE agents, right, or ICE funding?
Hmm.
Well, it's not going to matter if you don't have judges, right? Because like at the end of the day, Trump said in a clip that he's trying to go for like 2 to 3 million people, and like that's going to require 2 to 3 million trials. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So it's not really going to matter how much ICE has like in terms of funding, unless you're just going to put these people in a prison for 4 years. You know what I mean? Which he might do. I mean, I
Oh yeah,
wouldn't.
yeah, yeah. It's totally possible. With
Yeah,
him, he's enough of a wild card. And uh, you know what though? Oh my gosh, I hate to do this. I'm actually going to change my grade on immigration. I
sure.
think after thinking it over, I think I'm going to have to actually give him a C. And I'm a little hesitant to do that, but I was gonna originally link this topic with like foreign policy,
Hmm.
but it really is kind of like an immigration thing more so than a. I mean, it's kind of they kind of intersect this
Okay.
issue, but we've had these like deportations and well, not really deportations, but like revocations of the visas of like these Palestinian student protesters.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, that I would say that that's a pretty. I'm just not a fan of that at all because it's a threat to free speech rights, in the service of a foreign nation that I don't believe has our interests at heart.
Right.
So that's for one. Another thing, I'm just pro speech in general. So off the bat, I'm just kind of instinctually opposed to such actions. And then, yeah, so that's just so hard to justify. It's really, I don't know that you could maybe make a case where it's like, yeah, we're like allowed to do it. And yeah, that's probably right. I think we are allowed to do it because I don't think they quite have their rights go pretty far, but I don't think they quite have the rights of a natural born citizen. It's but it's not a good thing to do. Maybe I would be more sympathetic if these, students were like burning American flags and, like saying like fuck Americans and like, stuff like that. Because then it's like, well, this is our country and we were generous enough to let you in and you're doing that. Well, I'd be more okay, honestly, with
It's funny
kicking them
because
out.
that would also be an infringement on free speech, but you seem to be at least more okay with that. Why?
Yeah, well, because in the cases that are going on currently, we're doing all this. It's like, like Zionist fascism. It's like, we're doing this all in the service of Israelis who, frankly, like I said, they don't even have our interests at heart. So, if we were doing it in service of like Americans and like American nationalism, I'll be all for it. Honestly, I think that would be okay. So, I mean, on one hand, like I'm mostly, 100% pro free speech, but I think there is like, you know, if you're like, if you're like a foreign student, you
Hmm.
know, and you were doing that, like burning an American flag, I would have like really little sympathy. And in my mind, though, I will say like if an American like crazed leftist or something was burning an American flag, I don't like it. I think there's like a sacred aspect about the flag, kind of, but. I wouldn't want them to be imprisoned. I wouldn't really even want them to face any repercussions. Maybe their employer sees it and fires them. I'm not going to cry about that, but I wouldn't want them to be jailed or like anything like that, or even fined or anything. Assuming they weren't like committing arson. You know, so
Right.
I think they're in my mind. A natural born citizen is owed a whole lot more respect and a whole lot more rights, due process than a foreign born resident. But uh, yeah, I guess that's the nuance of it. So I'm not a free speech absolutist necessarily. There are limits for me, and
Sure.
but
Sure.
in this case, especially, I just totally disagree with punishing these kids because they're anti-Israel.
Right. Yeah. So that's what I was gonna say is that there's a lot of like missteps here. Um, for example, like they deported a United States citizen who's like 4 years old. Is literally a child who's like battling cancer. You can't make that stuff
Holy.
up. Yeah. So what happened is the mother is undocumented. She's married to a citizen. They have a child that is a citizen. They deported the mom, and the mom was like, "Let me take my baby with me," and they never checked to see if the baby was documented. So
Oh my gosh.
just a mess up, you know.
Oh
Um,
yeah. Yeah, that's pretty bad.
and they refused to bring the kid back. The dad is like screaming at the top of his lungs to like bring his kid back, and they won't do it. That's crazy. And then like you said, you've got the Israel protesters more than anything. I mean, these people are getting deported over like tweets and getting deported over like being present, not even hosting a protest, being present at a protest is getting these people deported, even though they're here legally. These aren't undocumented immigrants. These are immigrants that have filed paperwork. They have a visa. They're legal migrants, and they're being stripped of their rights simply because, some dictator 3,000 miles away dictated it so. So, um,
Oh yeah, yeah. It's just a terrible precedent, and hopefully, I don't know. Hopefully, like some kind of like, hopefully the courts will come in and save the day. That's kind of what I'm hoping. But
well, that's kind of my next step on this issue is, he's kind of at a standoff with the judicial branch. I mean, they've already went against him a million times on this immigration issue, and he just doesn't care. So, listen, if they're not going to get the Maryland man back, what makes you think that they're going to give some like Palestinian or Syrian student, Like, there's just no way.
oh yeah, it's a shame. And I have way more sympathy for like the Palestinian students. I was actually reading up about this Mohsen Madawi guy.
Hmm.
He was the one who like right like during his naturalization hearing or interview or whatever, it's part of the process, I guess. He ICE arrested him like in Vermont, and he was imprisoned for like 2 weeks. I think actually it was like 16 days, so a little more than 2 weeks. But it's just crazy. And it's kind of sad because I was reading up on his like backstory. Like they're, him and he's basically a refugee from the West Bank.
Hmm.
And so, like, this dude has, suffered quite a bit of tragedy in his time. And I totally believe him. I don't think he's just saying sob stories. Let's see. I wrote it down because I thought it was kind of interesting. His uncle was killed by the IDF. His childhood best friend was killed by the IDF. And mind you, this Mosin guy, he was only in uh, the West Bank as a child, so he witnessed all this as a child. And then even his brother was indirectly killed by the Israelis when they took like some kind of military action. I think it was like a miniature blockade or something,
Hmm.
and it prevented his brother from getting medical care, which led to long term health complications and then a childhood death. So,
Jesus.
this dude has a lot of reason to be angry. And, it's kind of remarkable because I've seen an interview of his. He did a really one that went pretty viral. I can't remember who it was that interviewed him. I wish I had written it down, but basically, what came off to me as kind of remarkable was the fact that he really wasn't hateful at all. Like, he didn't have, I mean, I'm sure he probably does have anger about everything, but he certainly was not expressing it. And even in what I was reading today about him, this like New York Times piece that he himself wrote and that they published, nothing really angry at all uh, about.
Interesting.
So yeah, he seems like a pretty peaceable guy, but that is actually something I wanted to hit on, like the peaceableness and like preaching nonviolence, because that in his interview, the recording I saw of him, he was preaching nonviolence, and he was preaching against like anti-Semitism even. And I was like, at first I was like, wow, how big of him, to kind of, I don't know, rise above and,
Right.
not call for like a violent intifada or something, whatever. But uh, I don't know. On another hand, though, kind of echoing sentiment from past podcasts of
Right.
ours, I'm like, why aren't you angry? Like I'm sure he is, but like I almost feel like anger would almost be more useful to him. Like I feel like anger and obviously I won't say violence. I don't want to ever advocate for that, but maybe some more, powerful, like forceful language. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe something that has some real anger to it would be more useful to him because it seems like lately, like the more vulgar expressions seem to be working in terms of vulgar and hateful things. They kind of seem to almost work better than these like peaceful, like very neutral attempts at protest or getting what you want. I tied this in with like this whole Shiloh Hendrix thing where this woman like flipped off and like called like I don't know, like some like black child the N word uh, or something, and then she raised like $500,000. It's like, well, that was vulgar, and I really don't judge her because she like lost her cool in the moment. It's like whatever, but it's like that display of vulgarity. It actually got her somewhere, and she's pretty set for life now. So seems like maybe I don't know. That's a long tangent. I'm really monopolizing it. I just kind of thought of those two things. It's like, well, vulgar expressions and expressing anger is actually really it seems successful. But what do you think about all that?
I mean, I mean, it's hard for me to like congratulate. or condone anger if it's not like immediately necessary, right? Like
Hmm.
speaking on that woman first, I think that what she first of all, you shouldn't say it. And then she was totally unapologetic about it. I mean, she did not care. And then she decided she was going to raise money off of it. I mean, that just makes me sick, you know? Like that just makes me sick to my stomach. But I'm not going to doubt its effectiveness. Like appealing to anger, like that's always going to do more harm than good, number 1, and then number 2, like it's people are more receptive to that emotion, right? Like cuz
Hmm.
it just feels more natural. It's something about the caveman brain. It just feels better, being angry. Because like I would say the natural, so like for that Palestinian kid you were talking about, I mean it would be more natural if he was angry, right? But I mean I give the kid props. I mean it sounds like he has very little anger and resentment for the IDF, even though it would definitely be warranted. You know what I mean? Definitely. Like if he was angry and pissed off at him, I mean, there's not a person alive that could be like, "Oh, sorry," you know,
Oh
deal with it.
yeah, especially according to his backstory. Like, wow, I would be beyond angry. You know, obviously, I'm not gonna say anything too crazy, but
Right.
if that happened to me, I'd be, yeah, there's no way I'd be able to be that composed.
But the kid seems to just be totally interested in like moving on with his life and making a life for him here in America. And, how are you gonna hate on that? You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, yeah. I think this, I'm honestly like all for. I've kind of rattled off this sentiment in the past when we were discussing the issue of Palestinian refugees on one of our first podcasts. I'm basically totally for these kinds of, pretty probably like higher IQ individuals, and that are pretty good at speaking and articulating their view, and I think they're a great uh, basically like weapon to use against the Israel lobby, or the all the they're a great spokesman for all of that. I think by bringing those people in, it diminishes the Zionist power in the U.S. So I'm actually kind of for bringing, and I'd be welcoming to bringing in quite a few of them. Honestly, I think it would be useful for my goals. So
Right. Right.
yeah, I'm really sympathetic to this guy.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't blame you. It is weird that they chose to do all this during like one of his like hearings, right? Like his naturalization hearing. They're kind of like taking everything off the table here. Like ICE is allowed to go into courtrooms, they're allowed to go into churches, they're allowed to go into schools. Like this is kind of sick to me. Like, and I mean like literally disgusting. Like I don't know. I don't really approve of this standoff he's doing with the judicial branch either. Like you're there's just no convincing me he can't bring back that guy from El Salvador. I don't believe it. But not just him. Like the idea that what you're gonna completely ignore due process. I mean, God. I mean, here's the thing. Due process is not nearly a high enough value for the American population because if he was doing this, like if Joe Biden was violating due process and then like openly ignoring it and being like, well, I don't know if we have to do due process, he would have been impeached within the first 100 days. You know what I mean? Like, there's there's no he wouldn't have made it to the midterms. You know?
Oh yeah, yeah, I think the Republican machine would have been pretty activated against him. I mean, when Biden was, semi ignoring the Supreme Court on the whole student loan thing,
Right.
And I say semi-ignoring because very few people actually got their student loans uh, looked at and erased or anything.
Right.
I remember there was a ton of Republican backlash, but nothing really all that substantial. Well, yeah, nothing really came of it, but they were pretty animated by it. So yeah, I can only imagine what they'd be doing if
Like
the roles
imagine
were reversed.
if he would have ignored due process for the January 6th riots. Like, could you just imagine if he was like, "Nope, we're throwing them in prison. We're not even going to charge them."
That's a good analogy.
Like,
That's a great analogy.
could you imagine what the Republican media apparatus would have done? Good Lord. Like,
That is,
but
yeah, that's actually a great analogy. Yeah, there. I mean, and I would join the Republican media
of course
apparatus.
you would.
I'd be.
I listen, I probably would just in the sense that like I mean, I'm a firm believer in due process. I mean, it's one of the most American ideas ever. I mean, doesn't every kid learn in like sixth grade social studies or sixth grade history like habeas corpus, right? Like,
Oh yeah.
it doesn't make any sense to me why they would uh, outright ignore it for a certain sect of the population. Um,
Oh yeah, and you know me, I've always been more sympathetic to the Jan Sixers. I there's plenty to criticize about them, I
oh, you think?
suppose, but oh yeah, yeah, but I think largely it's all. I'd say they're all patriots, and I would say they
Oh,
were.
shut up.
I would say their only sin was trusting Trump. Because Trump could have saved their butts on his way out, but instead he pardoned people like Kodak Black. The rapper. And it's like, okay, so kind of shows where Trump's priorities were a little out of whack back then. However, that being said, he did free all of them when he came back in, so he made good on that.
Yeah, I think it's a horrible precedent to set that he pardoned them, but I that we will save January 6th for another day. I don't think people care anymore. As crazy
Yeah,
as
it's
that
kind of
sounds, you know
it's
what I
kind
mean?
of off topic, old news. Yeah,
Yeah, as
yeah.
much as crazy as that sounds. Is there anything else immigration you'd like to say or
I think we fleshed it out pretty well. Yeah, I think even just in the course of this conversation, I was, able to kind of adjust my thinking a little. I went kind of like from a B to a C when I took into account some of the more unsavory things he's been doing. So, yeah, yeah,
yeah,
I'd
fair.
say we're good to move on.
What uh what would you rate his foreign policy?
That I would. Uh, my instinct was an F. But I'll say D because I'm actually a little optimistic. I really hated the Gaza, like buying Gaza and all that. I
Mm-hmm.
thought that was kind of, well, because it is, it's just stupid. But, uh, you know, uh, I'm a little more optimistic in terms of Iran. I think we're definitely in a precarious situation where things could, go south regarding that. He's using, I guess you would call it what, bellicose language. He's being pretty aggressive. So I just don't think that's a good tactic to take with them. In terms of, but I think there's at least a chance there that maybe a peace deal comes out of that. So I'll rank. I'm not going to be too hard on him on that just yet. Russia, D or F, honestly, because He's been too soft on Putin. He needs to be way, way harder on Putin. He's kind of, I think he was under the impression that if he played nice with Putin, that Putin like actually wanted the war to end or something, but that's just evidently not the case
Right. Clearly.
because
Clearly, right?
oh yeah, because honestly, to one extent, what more could Putin want if he really wanted peace? It seems like Trump would have given him quite a bit. Like he probably would have. I mean, he's basically already said that he's not even going to say Crimea belongs to the Ukrainians or anything. So I mean, I wouldn't be surprised that if peace talks actually started, I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of it, Putin had the Donbass as well. So,
Oh
so
yeah, no, I'm
I'll,
100%.
oh yeah, so I'm grading him an F on that. Yeah, F on that, F on Gaza, F D minus on Iran. I will say I'll say this one last thing, and then I'll give it to you so you can give me your thoughts.
Hmm.
But I actually think, if you want to call this foreign policy, his stance on like Greenland and stuff, like buying Greenland, to the extent he's
Oh God.
serious and not joking, I'm gonna give that an A, actually, because I truly, and you might think I'm joking a little, uh, and it probably does sound humorous, but I really think that Denmark has no business owning that. I think that should belong to us, especially,
Right. So Denmark has no right, but like we've got the right.
yeah, we're stronger, we're closer in proximity, we could actually do something with it. We could, and we're gonna, I mean, as the Arctic ice melts, that there's gonna be, I think those waters will be more contested, so we're gonna need a bigger presence over there. So I think for a whole host of reasons, I don't want Russia to be the boss of the Arctic. I want it to be the West, us, NATO, all that. So yeah, to that extent, I'm totally for taking Greenland. So I'll give that an A. So I'll give Trump's overall rating on foreign policy a D minus, like flat 60. But how about you?
I gave him a D minus. Starting with the allies that we have. I think it's like a little embarrassing that he makes everyone come over here and basically kiss the ring. I'm just not a fan. And then those that don't, or even if they don't do it good enough, he just pushes them away. I'm like, why? Like Canada, for example, or
Oh yeah.
it makes no sense. Makes zero sense. It's one of our two biggest trading partners that are allies, Mexico and Canada. And you're gonna try and piss them off and turn it into this contest to try and shake it into a win. It's beyond stupid. But I guess none of that really matters because at the end of the day, they'll probably still be with us. But as far as like dealing with our enemies goes, like you said, Russia could not be worse unless he honestly, like I would be shocked if he didn't give up the Donbass at this point. Um, and then Israel, as you know, you can guess. If he really pulls off this Iran deal, then maybe, right? Maybe I'll be like, okay, perhaps I was too too negative on you. But China, I don't feel like has been as good as Scott Bessent and Kudlow would have you fucking think. But I think it gives them a lot of strategic opportunities, right? Like Xi is going to Japan and he's going to Korea, he's going to Vietnam, and he's basically building like a Southeast Asian like trading bloc against the United. Japan already came out and said they're like, we will not enter an agreement that hurts our relations with China. And the speculation is that Japan is the first of many in that region to kind of kowtow to China. And it's because of these tariffs. And it makes no sense why he's trying to pick fights with people that like for all intents and purposes should be our friends.
Oh yeah.
So, I mean, there's not a whole lot of wins I can really say, to be completely honest with you. I mean, you got the vibe whenever he went to Pope Francis's funeral, and basically when he walked in, nobody said a word. And then when like Zelensky walked in, when Macron walked in, when oh, I forget the UK guy, but when he walked in, everyone cheered, right? And everyone was like, "Hey, thanks for coming." Oh my God. But when Trump walked in, there was no like, "Oh, thank goodness, the leader of the Western world is here," right? Even though that's what he should have like arrived to, but he couldn't because he's such a jackass, and gets in his own way.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Honestly, I think honestly, like, well, I'll save what I was about to say for. Do we? Is that all we wanted to
Yeah,
say on
yeah, go
foreign
ahead.
policy? Okay. Uh, do you want to hit the budget deficit, and then I can give my rank on that, and then we can get like, I guess our overall, just restate our overall vibe of this, and then
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, budget deficit, I'm gonna give him an F because I'm gonna tie in Doge here. Um, they just absolutely failed to decrease spending or find waste, find fraud, find abuse, like in any meaningful way, right? So there's a month by month tracker that tracks how much federal spending has gone up each month, and we are like $150 billion more than was spent in 2024. So not off to a great start, really
oh
not.
yeah, pretty
Um,
bad start.
Now we'll we'll find out if that changes with this budget bill, but all the info that I'm seeing so far shows that like we're going to radically increase like defense spending and everything. And even with all the cuts that they're trying to couple with that, it's going to net to almost $1 trillion deficit.
Mm,
So that
fantastic.
pretty comfortable F from me. Um,
Yeah, I have to concur. I mean, there's the Doge fiasco. It was just stupid. I mean, like, for one thing, the website of, that listed all their progress and all their, cuts, like, pretty much all of that was just like lies. So, or like, or perhaps they were just too stupid to, like, check their own facts. Maybe, I don't know, give them the
right.
benefit of the doubt. Maybe it
Well,
wasn't malice.
you gotta cut him a little bit of slack because my God, those kids are only 22. You know, like
Very true, very true. You know, I guess when you have big balls doing things, you got to expect that there might be some missteps,
right.
yeah, pretty costly missteps. I would say. I think I don't know. I think service was restored in some areas, but I'm pretty sure some like AIDS babies died or something because of this. So
Right.
yeah, not good. Not good optics. I think, there's an argument to be made for cutting, like, all this aid abroad, but honestly, I don't know if you can make a super compelling argument because it's really a tiny fraction of our spending, and it gives us, it's a lot of soft power, you
Right.
know, uh, especially like these food programs. I'm more open to arguments about, like, I guess, more Darwinian arguments, but as cruel as they may sound, but I think for soft power purposes, we should at least keep the tap running.
Well, I mean,
Uh,
these the right wing philosophy doesn't even acknowledge soft power as a power, right?
oh yeah, yeah. Certainly certainly those in this administration don't seem to value it.
Right. Especially Trump himself.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I don't think he cares for it at all. Otherwise, USAID wouldn't have been cut. But
Right.
but yeah, so I just gotta give him an F on that, a hard F, like F minus, honestly, because I don't. I mean, we'll see. Maybe that'll change, with this upcoming budget thing, but uh,
Right.
I don't know. F on that. So, do you want to give your, I guess, kind of like final grade? Has it shifted any after we've had this conversation? Is it still a D minus or is it in the F range now?
No, no, it's still a D to D minus. I mean, that just a couple of like intangible things too that I just wanted to touch on. Like, I mean, obviously the education is horrible, right? National unity. I mean, it's safe to say he's not going to be the FDR of our day, you know, or even the
Hmm.
Reagan of our day, which is I think what he aspires to be. Is like somebody who's like like a national treasure type, you know, and it's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
not gonna happen. I mean, he also hasn't done a damn thing for climate change, which I know is like nobody's gonna care. You know, the people nobody's gonna care that he hasn't done that. So, but it's just one of those things that I personally don't like. So,
Yeah, I agree, but I agree on both points. I'm sad that he hasn't made advancements in that regard, and I'm also sad that nobody's gonna care. So,
yeah, I mean, nobody's really gonna. And I'll tell you one of the other things, and then I'll kick it over to you. But I'm just not a fan of like the attitude that this administration has. And what I mean by that is like, have you watched any of the cabinet meetings, like the open like camera stuff yet?
I haven't really paid too much attention to those. Nah, but go on. What?
Well, so basically what'll happen is like if you watch like Joe Biden or even the last Trump administration or even like Obama, basically they'd go around and they'd be like, here's the problems we're facing, here's what we're doing, here's where to be hopeful, like here's what we have to do, right? But when Trump has his cabinet meetings, the first like 30 seconds goes something like this. Well, Mr. Trump, I just want to say that like this administration is outstanding and you might be the smartest man to ever hold that office. And this has just been a true pleasure for me to work here and like just kind of be a sponge off. Like they're basically, I mean, they're capitulating. Like they're just, I mean, for lack of a better word, they're just sucking his dick. Like
Yeah.
it's embarrassing that you have grown men and the top executives on this planet are having to kiss the ring of a child who is too embarrassed to take any minor criticism other than everything's perfect, and anything that's not even remotely perfect, well, that's Biden's fault. Like, you know, I just hate it. Because like at least in the first administration, we had people that would be like, I kind of disagree. Now, eventually they'd get fired, but at least, we'd have those people that are like at least somewhat competent running the show, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's pretty much it. That's pretty much it for me. So you go ahead, buddy.
Well, I think honestly, now that I've fleshed out my thoughts on the matter with you, I think I have to go all the way, and I got to just give an F overall. I mean, I think there's certain points he's done better on, but it's overall just on the things listed, which are the things I probably care most about. I would
Right.
say it's just bad
Like
overall.
a
There's
almost like a weighted report card, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. I just don't think there's not enough good to redeem the bad. The bad is just really outweighing the good all around. Hopefully, it can be recuperated. I don't know. I think a lot of damage has already been done, uh, especially regarding like trade and all that. But yeah, honestly, and what I was gonna say earlier, but that I wanted to save for this little part where I give my overall impression is that I, I've basically been thinking this for a while now. It didn't take long for me to reach this realization, but I think it would have been better if Kamala had won. like,
No,
like
no way. You're trolling me. You're trolling me right now. You did not just say that.
I think no, yeah, I finally, I'm just gonna come out and say it. Like, there are certainly things I would have disliked about a Kamala presidency. And we wouldn't have gotten the good things that we have gotten from Trump, like the shutting down of the border, which I love. And then I love the kind of like the cultural shift that was kind of cemented by his victory, which I do think is a really real, and like even if it's kind of intangible, it's like something I feel pretty viscerally.
Hmm.
So I do think that's a victory. And the Jan Sixers wouldn't have been freed or whatever if he hadn't won. And I do feel sympathy towards them, and so I'm pleased with that. But those are all. I mean, especially Jan Sixers. That's a pretty petty concern compared to like U.S. hegemony. Our place in the world. How the economy, whether or not war with Iran breaks out. I honestly, I think yeah, as much as I would have not liked a Kamala presidency, and at the time, my calculations were like, well, there's X amount chance that Kamala gets us into war with Iran anyways, and then there's X amount chance that she doesn't do anything to help the Gazans. And I also just don't want to be like culpable for any like the Gaza stuff was even more visceral and like in your face at that time. So I just didn't want to
Right.
be like I didn't want to like vote for something that like affirmed that the Biden policy was okay.
Hmm.
So I just decided to not vote for either. But I think I'm finally, and I've kind of been this way for like a couple weeks, but I think firmly, now that we've reached this 100-day mark since last Tuesday, I think
Hmm.
I think firmly, I think it would have been better if Kamala had just won. Honestly, this is pretty bad.
Yeah, yeah. Well, especially on like the objective metrics, like the economy would almost certainly be better, right?
Oh yeah, yeah,
Foreign policy, it's hard to be worse. That's my, it's. I'm not saying it's not possible. I'm just saying it would have been hard to be worse. You know what I mean?
I 100
Um,
percent agreed. I mean, I think it would 100%, like without a doubt, be better had she won
yeah.
right now.
Like she definitely like Trump really has no preference, I feel like, when it comes to Gaza or, you know, occupation over there. But he knows the hand that feeds him. You know what I mean? Like he knows that the Israel lobby is one of his closest allies. So like in what world is he gonna tell them no? You know what I mean? Versus like at least Kamala was somewhat sympathetic and she has the base of the party pushing her away from that. You know what I mean? So
That's a good point. Even if she wouldn't have been the, humanitarian regarding that issue that I would have wanted her to be, there would at least be some pressure for her to be. Whereas
right.
with Trump, that pressure just doesn't exist. So yeah. And then at least, in terms of like Russia and Ukraine, the situation would be way better in that regard. Had she won because, you know, like like you and me both did, we ranked him an F on that particular issue. So yeah.
Right. Yeah, yeah, no, I couldn't agree more, and that's kind of how I mean, for the voter or for the audience, I was not one of the voters that like fell in love with Kamala Harris. I would have rather they did like an open primary and we just kind of get the best of a bad situation. But yeah, I mean, there was never a doubt in my mind who was going to be better for the country in terms of just, competence, attitude, like culture, all that. Um, and I understand you and I disagree about like the culture part, but I mean, even this like manosphere, like Andrew Tate type culture that like Trump, he's more in that culture than he is like the Mike Pence culture for sure. So,
Oh yeah.
like, okay, maybe I'm exaggerating when I say Andrew Tate, but like not by much. Like, he's much closer to Andrew Tate than he is to Mike Pence, right? So,
Well, certainly in his personal life, I mean, probably not right now, but he was a pretty prolific womanizer and, had all those different marriages and, I'm sure, he was featured on like Playboy magazine multiple times, I think.
yeah, a couple of different times.
So, he
Yeah,
certainly got his fill of degeneracy. So, yeah, he's certainly closer to Andrew Tate than Mike Pence.
yeah, I mean, he made his, he casinos, literally everything. That's like degenerate manosphere. And they are like, yeah, this guy is the Christian champion for the Republican Party. Like, it just kind of, oh
That is
boy.
funny, though, that now, yeah, I hadn't really thought about it that much, but he really is like if Andrew Tate was like a boomer, like, I mean, their lifestyles are actually, kind of similar in many ways. At least Trump's lifestyle when he was younger probably mirrored that of Andrew Tate's pretty well.
Oh, 100%. 100%. But that is interesting that you have finally said the words. So that's doesn't it feel liberating? And listen, I Kamala would not have been great, right? But
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
in like a net benefit, right? She would have been better. And it's not. It's really not that close. So,
Yeah, I agree. And the conservative management of the decline, that would have been the most preferable out or of the
yeah.
two options presented. I hate that they didn't have an open primary. That would have maybe fixed, well, I don't know. I say that maybe would have helped things, but I don't know if any of the other options would have been all that great.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, they definitely would have performed better than Kamala, and I'll tell you why. Is because Kamala was force fed to the party and to the base, right? But if you have an open
Yeah,
primary, you get the most popular. So, which probably would not have been Kamala, right? She would have been one of the
yeah.
ones that like flailed fairly quickly.
Yeah, just
And
like in the 2020 primary, she fell out of that pretty quick. So
right, right. Um,
yeah, I could see like a Newsom or someone, someone like that. Kind of if any of the other like Democrats had some balls and were willing to have actually challenged her, they could have definitely won, especially if they were smart enough to moderate a little more on the Gaza issue, which was so animating at the time. I think they could have handily won, but
well, especially for Rust Belt states like Michigan, like it's crazy. There was four states that voted in the Senate for the Democrats, but voted presidential for Trump. So, it's not like these people were just dying to vote for Republicans, right? They just generally viewed him as the lesser of two evils. So,
isn't that something? Yeah,
well, no one's ever
it's
accused the
amazing.
voting base of this country to be the smartest people because I mean, listening to Donald Trump talk How could anybody say, yes, this is a competent person who knows exactly how to handle the top issues of, I mean, for God's sakes, this is what like kind of rubs me the wrong way about the Republican Party is because I don't even understand how you can listen to the guy talk about anything of importance and be like, you know what? That's who I want to represent me, you know?
Yeah, I think it's more to do with like disdain for the other side, which I totally get. So,
Right, but the entire other side, like we have, I don't know. I guess I kind of get it, but still, it's ridiculous to me.
yeah, well, on this topic, in terms of like disdain for the other side, I actually have been thinking about this a little bit. And, like, I was like wondering, I was thinking to myself, you know, why is it that, black people vote like 90% for Democrats, although when when you take into account their like personal beliefs, black people are in many cases more conservative than whites on a number of issues, especially as it relates to like like gay marriage, interracial marriage as well. They're they're a little more conservative. But I think what draws black people to the Democrats is like the sense that the Republicans hate them, or that the voting
Right.
base of the Republicans hate them. So they're kind of like, it's like they might not totally agree value wise with what the Democrats have going, but I think their perception that the other side is like a little racist or maybe has like a little animosity towards them is what's like polarizing them against it's what is basically just keeping them from voting Republican, even though
Right.
their values might match a little more. Uh, and then I was kind of thinking, in my own like experience, how I relate to the Democratic Party, and I'm like, on one hand, economics, climate change, foreign policy. I probably align with the Democrats a lot more uh, than uh, than the Republicans. The problem is, I get the sense that the Democrats hate white people, or not all of them, but like a very large contingent of even elected Democrats, and
Hmm.
uh, and there's not enough pushback on their side, even from like reasonable Democrat people I would call reasonable, like Bill Maher and stuff. Like even from him, there's really no pushback on that stuff. Like just today, I saw some clip of like Ilhan Omar saying like white men were like the most dangerous thing in this country, the most dangerous thing this country faced. Like, kid you not. And I'm like, are you serious? I mean, how can you people ever expect, us white guys or white adjacent people such as I to vote for you when you're saying shit like that? So I think it really just comes down to this kind of more tribal instinct that totally precludes people from seeing the other side's point of view, because when it gets like tribalized and racialized like that, I think it just makes it impossible for people to vote differently.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the the Democratic Party, I think the reason that they get a lot of like the minority vote in general is just because they're more open to like the idea of like promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion, right?
Hmm.
And so, like, because of that, versus you have the other party, the Republicans, who are entirely opposed to that. They are opposed to the idea of diversity, right? And the idea of inclusion, right? And equity. Oh, get out of here. That's communism. Uh, but I mean, tell you what, I mean, look at Kevin McCarthy's got a good like analogy for this. If you look at the Democratic Party, I mean, they look like America, right? You got poor people, rich people, white people, black people, Muslims, Christians, everything, right? Catholics, right? Even like gay people, transgender people, heterosexual people. It's all of America. And then when you look at the Republican side, right? It's the most exclusive country club in America. It's a bunch of white people, you know? And he says it pretty good. And Kevin McCarthy, right? I mean, he used to be the Speaker of the House for the guys. So
Oh yeah. Well, here's the thing though. I think Kevin is kind of missing the point. See, I find the white country club attendee to be aspirational and something that I would like to emulate to the degree I could. I don't think I'm going to buy a country club membership, but I do, the exclusionist, the elitist. I'm totally open to aspects of that. Uh, in fact, like, I really like many aspects of it. It's nice, it's clean, it's calm. Yeah, I think there's a lot of value there. So, the Democrats are certainly more diverse. I think I'm just like rejecting the premise that that's like a good, I don't know if I would, if I'm making a value judgment, I don't even know if I would call that like a good.
right, well, I'm not saying diversity for the sake of diversity is good, right? Like, I'll tell you why. Like, it seems like a lot of the times, like, for example, like when colleges do this practice, instead of getting like, like I said for the Democrats, where it's like rich people, poor people, black people, white people, instead what they're doing is it's just like a bunch of rich black kids, rich white kids, rich Latino, you know what I mean? So it's not real, it's pseudo diversity, right? But I mean, the idea that like true diversity isn't a good. I mean, I just don't know what to tell you. I mean, to say that it's not good to be a melting pot for the best and brightest of the entire world is kind of crazy to me. And that includes all things, science, culture, everything. So, I mean, don't you want the best and brightest over here in America?
Mm,
Or would you rather us be like our exclusion, like that's our strength? Like our unity and our exclusion is our strength
I
versus
think I
like
would,
our diversity and our adaptability.
yeah, I think I would prefer exclusion largely. It probably depends on, the level. I'm not totally against, high skilled immigration, but I think in terms of, high skilled immigrants, we've basically taken enough. I don't want any more currently. My brother, in fact, has been telling me about how he has friends who have graduated and they're really struggling to find like these like STEM like tech jobs, because of like H-1B immigrants basically like flooding the market, and
Right.
the fact that you know uh you know it's like a sector that when specifically us like Gen Zers, like us older Gen Zers, when we were coming up, we were told like these are the jobs of the future. This is probably the field you should go into. So basically, that kind of messaging has really flooded the market already. So I mean, in terms of like high skilled immigrants, I think we already have more than enough. I would rather, homegrown Americans get those jobs. And I think, as a society, we have a duty to prioritize, natural born citizens. So, in terms of, illegal immigrants. You know my thoughts on that. I find them to be a strain, and I think the data meets that out. So all in all, I don't see like a whole lot of benefit of the diversity we've been getting. But in a limited sense, I think there could be some value to it. Uh, I there's like oh there's this Thai place I eat at pretty regularly, and I would imagine that a Thai immigrant has probably opened that. I So yeah, that's pretty
That's
nice.
that was a very inside joke that the audience won't get. That's a very Brandon type statement you just made.
Yeah,
Um,
it is. It is something he would say.
it just okay. Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, I don't really have a huge problem with diversity, other than like the pace of it, you know? Like I'm not super into like changing too much too fast just because like I think that there is a real thing as like American values, things like, like liberty, uh, you know, equality under the law, stuff like that, basic stuff, right? And my worry is that like if you bring like people that are not raised in that from an early age, maybe, it changes too quickly over here. So,
Yeah, well, I would echo that, and I do. Maybe let me also temper what I was saying because I do want to like make it kind of clear where I stand.
mhm.
I'm not totally opposed to a level of diversification. In fact, we're the global hegemon. We're an empire, so it's really only natural that people are going to want, from all around, are going to want to come here and, set up shop and do things. But it's my opinion that there have been way too many, and it's coming at the detriment currently of, natural born Americans. So I think that's where I would strike it. But I do find other cultures interesting, and I'd think it is kind of nice when they bring their uh whatever qualities they have from over there, their art, their music. I think it's interesting, even if their food too. I mean, because people will say, there's like a recurring right wing argument that, oh, well, we don't need immigrants to come to make ethnic food. That's not a good reason to have them over. And, that is true. The recipes are online. We could make them, but, how many white guys are going to like create a Thai restaurant? It's probably very few. So, to an extent, I do value their cultures you know, in a limited sense, if we have their restaurants over here, they're pretty tasty, something to a nice novelty to enjoy. I just don't want it to be ubiquitous. I don't want it to be everywhere.
Yeah, no, I totally get you. Like and I think that we need to do a better job of like assimilating these people into like I mean for gosh, this may get me kicked off YouTube, but for lack of a better like idea, white America. Like we need to better welcome these people into like what it means to like be American, right? Rather than just letting them like have little cliques here and there and rather than assimilating, they're just kind of, starting a business and then going home and just staying, not really like
Yes.
engaging in the culture. Um,
Yeah, I agree because oftentimes when you get these people, they create their own like ethnic enclaves and like
right.
and in cities. And I would prefer that they not do that, honestly, because, for one thing, that means that's a kind of a sign that that there's been too much transformation too quickly. That's one thing. If there's enough of them to where they can create entire like miniature pounds basically. So
Well, I would say that that burden though falls upon I guess God, I hope this isn't confusing, but white America, like we should be going to like these Thai places and, whether it's, hey, come to church, come to bingo night, come to pickleball, whatever, come watch the Super Bowl, like come engage in some American culture, right? Um, it's very similar because like when we go to other countries, I mean, part of why we go is to engage in the culture of the country. So like when you go to like Japan, right? You might do like some Japan nightlife scenes. When you go to Mexico, you may watch bullfighting, soccer, and like homemade tacos, right? Or whatever, right?
oh yeah, yeah.
Um, so when they're over here, and those people are very happy to sell you tacos, sell you whatever, right? And now when these people are over here, it seems like we just kind of stop at like giving them money for Thai food. Um,
Yeah, there I think there is an element of that.
and
They probably need to.
a lot of that is internalized racism. Like I know that's gonna trigger the hell out of you, but like like there's and I don't remember the number, but there is a poll out there that says like would it bother you if you were on like a train or on a sidewalk and you heard a language you didn't understand? And like something like 60% of the people were like, yeah, that would bother the hell out of me.
Yeah, see, I mean, in terms of like that, like academic, those like academic liberal terms, like internalized racism, I'm not the type of person to just totally recoil at that stuff because, if you explain it out and give me a definition of it, I would probably say that, it probably does exist and that there's like some reality to it. But my thing is, I would probably accept its existence and then make a different value judgment, or maybe reject a bit of the premise, like like what you like what was just said, like if you dislike hearing a foreign language in public while out and about, uh would that make you uncomfortable? And I would say, for me, I would dislike hearing that. But does that mean racism? Well, maybe, but then you have to like. But I don't think I'm wrong to find to have discomfort with that. I think I'm in my because the connotation of racism almost has like this implication that that belief is wrong. But I think I'm well within my right to dislike hearing
Well, you're
foreign.
definitely well within your right? I just wouldn't, I just don't know if it's necessarily a good, like a capital G good. You know what I mean?
Oh
Um,
yeah, yeah.
I think indifference, if anything, would be like the better. But um, I mean that's what it is to me. Like it doesn't bother me. Um, but it's not like I get super excited when I hear English either. You know what I mean? Like I have no preference almost.
Well, uh, actually,
Boy,
no,
how'd we get here?
I won't say what I was about to say because I think it might not bode well with you.
Probably not
Well,
a good
I'll
idea.
say it. I'll say it. And if it's something we need to edit out, we can. I'll say it in a tactful way. Honestly, I was actually eating Thai food in the city, believe it or not, and I heard. I don't know from what part of Europe these guys were from. I believe they may have been German, but I'm not really. Uh, you know, I I don't know the languages of European countries to tell, uh, but they certainly were not American. And I thought it was a cute little novelty hearing it. But I think that's more so because that's like, it's something that's far more rare. It's not something as ubiquitous as Spanish, which Because when I hear Spanish in public, it feels more like it's too common, and it's almost not like a threat to the English language, but it's become too prevalent for my taste. Whereas if it were, maybe once in a blue moon rather than a regular occurrence, I wouldn't have as much, problem with it. I kind of went off the rails there. I think, Trump, I'm grading him an F, is for the first 100 days. Hopefully the next 100 days are better.
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
about you? Any closing words?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's easy to root against a Donald Trump. It's easy to hope that all this incompetence continues in the hopes that like the Democrats can win a majority in the Senate or the House or whatever, build momentum, whatever, right? I don't look at things like that. I think that's really it's not very productive to the dialogue. So, although I understand like the political calculations that are going on when you do that, I'm just not a partisan. So I honestly I hate the Democrats too. I just hate them less, you know. Um, so like if in an ideal world, Trump would just get his crap together and start steering us the right direction. I don't have a whole lot of confidence in that, but hopefully they figure something out. So, but that's
Well said. Well
yeah.
said.
Yeah, you can't root against him in the sense of like him actually performing the job, right? Um, you can maybe root against like public sentiment, but like we actually need him to do a good job. Like people's retirements are at stake, people's jobs are at stake. Uh, hell, honestly, like the entire like world chess that's going on in terms of like hegemony and stuff. For the sake of all of that, you have to hope that he does a positive job. So,
Agreed. Agreed. You know, might root against him in terms of voting, but I really hope he does not screw things up too bad. So in that sense, very much rooting for him.